Hey everyone, Clay here. This past weekend, Sean and I were part of a panel looking back on 7 years of the White Knight universe at the Granite State Comic Con in Manchester, New Hampshire. And wouldn't you know it, we were lucky enough to find out that it was recorded. And so we wanted to drop it here for you guys to check out as a mini special episode. It's myself and Sean and Katana Collins and Blake Northcott all talking about everything Batman on Batman Day at the Granite State Comic Con. So, check it out. Thank you to Granite State for having us and for having the panel. And we'll be back soon with Return of the Joker. Thanks. Enjoy.
So my wife and I just drove down from Maine. We just parked like 10 minutes ago. And I thought we would have a moderator, but we don't. But that's okay, because Clay and I do a podcast, and we're pretty good at winging it.
We do. It's called the BATTASS Podcast, the BATTASS Podcast, where we talk about Batman the Animated Series.
Keep going. Do your thing. I'm Clay McCormack. With me as always.
Well, I'm Clay McCormack. With me as always is Sean Murphy. And today we have Katana Collins and Blake Northcott. How you guys doing?
Great.
We are here at the Granite State Comic Con in Manchester, New Hampshire, and we're going to be talking about all things Batman on Batman Day. We're going to be talking about the Murphyverse, because we've just put a bit of a cap on the Murphyverse for a while, I think, haven't we, Sean?
Yes, we have. Well, we can talk a lot. I'm happy to spill the beans on where I'd like the series to be headed if anyone's interested.
I don't think anybody's interested in that.
No. Well, I find with these shows, a lot of people might not even know who we are. They're just, oh, you guys are creators who work on Batman, and
Sure.
that's enough, you know. I'm actually from the area. I graduated from Pinkerton. I lived in Derry, and I used to work at Stark's Mill and Brewery. It's actually a painting I did of, you know how everyone likes to do God creates Adam, but they do it with beer glasses? Uh-huh. They commissioned one of those for me, and when I left, they painted over it. So underneath 3 layers of paint is the Sean Murphy original.
They painted over it?
It wasn't that good. I'm not really a painter. I was like 18 and just happy to get a gig doing art professionally, you know. I thought that would be the last time, so. So why don't you tell us who you guys are?
I'm Katana Collins. In this realm, I'm most known for writing Batman White Knight Harley Quinn, as well as Generation Joker. I also did a run with Dynamite called Cherish. And this isn't technically announced yet, but first look right here. My legendary Red Sonja story is coming out in December, so
Excellent.
It's steampunk Red Sonja.
Excellent. Breaking news.
Breaking news. Also, don't tell anyone.
And don't forget to tell them that you write erotic romance novels on the
so
side.
outside of this arena, I'm most known for writing erotic romance novels. I'm a USA Today bestseller of romance novels.
That's amazing. I'm Blake Northcott. I've been writing for around 11 years, and I've done some Kickstarted novels that were Arena Mode and the North Valley Grimoire. I've also worked with Aspen Comics. I did a run of Fathom. I've worked with Dynamite, Heavy Metal Magazine. They're also putting out my book Arena Mode into bookstores right now. And I am currently working with Massive and Whatnot. I am the EIC over there, and we have North Valley Grimoire out as a comic series.
Yay.
Yep, and I'm putting Zorro out through Massive in a few months. So when Blake and I have known each other for 10 years, but we both happen to be working for the same company right now. She's an employee, and I'm a freelancer. So. And
we did Catwoman 2 issues where I got to write that.
I totally forgot about that. Yeah.
And my name's Clay McCormack. I wrote White Knight Presents Red Hood with Sean, and I've also wrote Generation Joker with Katana, which is just about to wrap up in about a month, which has been very fun. And I have a book called Bloody Hell, which is about Vikings in World War I, which is a lot of fun as well. So, Sean, this is 7 years.
It's funny. This is technically, we're taking over. This is our podcast, isn't it?
It is.
All
yeah.
right.
Yeah. So what did you think of the season finale of season 2 of Batman Beyond? No, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Let's get Blake's thoughts on the ending of episode 4. Yeah, so Clay's actually been working with me on Batman White Knight since the beginning, since 2017. He was a sort of student of mine once. I had this thing called the apprenticeship. So I met him and helped him and 4 others, try to teach them skills and bring them with me to shows and try to help.
That's gonna be 10 years next year, by the way.
Yeah. They live with us for 2 weeks. My wife is cooking every day for us, and we bought enough bunk beds for everybody. Poor Clay was in the attic on a futon, and after 2 weeks of sleeping there, I know because he's a taller guy, and I've noticed there's 4 dents in
Not
the
only
feet.
that, but it was February in Maine, and everybody else, there was one person from Florida, one person from Savannah, 2 people from Savannah, and 1 person from Portugal. I was the only one who knew what winter was.
Yeah.
And so he's like, we don't have any heat in the attic. You're fine with that, right? I'm like, yeah, whatever.
It was also a haunted attic, according to some of our friends.
So it was attractive.
Haunted by a bearded weirdo that looked a lot like you, Clay. But when I remember when we started the podcast, like episode 1, I'm sure, I'm like, oh yeah, I'm thinking about pitching a Batman story. And then episode 10, I'm like, yeah, I think I've got some stuff together. Episode 20, I'm like, yeah, I gave it to DC. They seem interested. So, but Clay was always with me, helping me edit, do sort of like creative editing. I would give him to look at the scripts and give me notes before I even gave it to DC. I pushed hard to give him some kind of credit in the book. And for legal reasons, they're just not able to do that. So I dedicated, I think, the first volume to you.
Yes, thank you.
And
I was too hot for DC.
Yeah.
For the record, I don't think any book has been dedicated to me ever, and I've been married to the dude for like 10 years. So
That's next up.
Well,
Clay,
you
you
got
are
his
next level.
You got his whole life, though.
My wiener is dedicated to you.
it better be.
And that you could print.
We got
Man,
kids in the
where do we go
audience
from here?
That took a turn.
So what's it been like looking back on 7 years of this?
The podcast or Batman?
Of Batman White Knight.
Super proud. Some of the plans I had before COVID got derailed by COVID. I had 2 or 3 spin-off books planned. We had a Nightwing Batgirl book that I think you were going to write. Mm-hmm. Red Hood was planned. And then there's 2 others, but COVID hit and the resources, and everyone thought the world was going to explode. So you wrote Harley White Knight, and there was a character in there called the Producer who was going to create a bunch of new villains in my Gotham.
Why did you need new villains produced?
Because I killed them all.
Yeah. Yes.
It made writing the next book very difficult when there were no villains left.
Correct.
Thanks, Sean.
Every volume of Batman I just assume is going to be my last, so I just go for broke. I'm like, screw it, he kills all the villains. Like, who cares? No one's going to buy this anyway. And like, oh, well, sold. Can you do a 3rd one? I'm like, shit, there's no more villains left, so what do I do?
You want to make sure no one can follow you, even yourself.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah. And I probably should give a thank you to my wife, too, for helping me write the Harley Quinn stuff. Like
now I get the dedication.
I'm not dedicating it to you. Get my wiener. I remember when I was coming up with the idea of 2 Harleys and having one that was, they're both sort of victims or survivors. So stuff like that, like trying to talk about these subjects as a straight white dude in a way that's not offensive. So I would run things by her and be like, do you think Harley would do this? Can I have her do that? Is this okay? Is that offensive? And I think mostly I got it right. You would sort of course correct, be like, don't say victims, say survivors. Or, Harley should do this. She's more empowered if she does X, Y, Z. I'm like, oh, is that what it's like being a woman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Katana, what was it like getting to write Harley for the first time? Were you jumping the chance to do it? Were you hesitant to jump into the White Knight universe? What did you think?
Oh, it feels like so long ago. I don't even remember. I don't think I was hesitant, was I? I was pretty excited because I had known that character, this specific Harley Quinn, for so long because I'd been reading with him and kind of with you helping, not edit. I was definitely not an editor, but I think that I felt like I knew her so well, and being that she had just given birth, I felt like who better to tell this story than a woman who can't have children and will never give birth. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, wow. All right.
Even dark. No, that is something that I talk about very vocally. But I did think that being a woman, it was that postpartum tale that I could tell probably better than Sean could, for instance.
I'd like to get Blake talking here, too.
Yeah.
Blake, for your Catwoman series, you brought back a fan favorite villain. Is that right?
Yes, we had some. I think most fun was Snowflame, right?
Snowflame. You got-
Crazy character. Like, we made him super, leaning into those Miami Vice kind of look.
What was his superpower again?
Oh, yeah, he just, like, powered up on cocaine, got crazy.
Yes.
Which we didn't think, like, this is going to be, like, how are they going to show this? Do you remember, like, right before it went to print? They
Yeah.
were like, oh, we can't show him actually doing this. We have to pull these panels.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, did DC Legal
Yeah.
really step in with that?
They did at the end.
Before it went to print, suddenly they had a problem with us using a character that does drugs, which I get. But Snowflame is their character
Right.
from the 70s. They create. So I thought, well, no one gives a shit about this character. Let's bring him back and we'll just kill him off, because that's what I do in my books to be clever. And they decided not to let us kill him, and then they didn't want us to show any kind of drugs. Like at one point, they were inside of a Lamborghini, and the glove compartment popped open.
Yeah.
There's supposed to be a bag of coke there. And what happened with
That's
that?
what they did. They kind of put a little baggie, but you don't see anyone doing it.
Right.
It's there, but
It's
that's
a
what
bag
they
of sugar
explained it.
inside of an 80s Lamborghini.
It's just in the air in every panel.
Yeah.
Yeah, like every Michael Mann movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
Blake, what did you like about writing Catwoman? Because it's actually, ironically, it's the only major character who hasn't shown up in the Murphyverse is Catwoman. So you are in rarefied air.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, so much legacy goes into this character. It's daunting because 80 years of history there. She's such an interesting and unique character. I loved that she's kind of morally ambiguous in the sense of sometimes she leans into like her good side, and then other times she's being a little bit more nefarious. So you don't really know what she's going to do. She always kind of throws a monkey wrench into whatever she's planning or plotting. So that was really fun to play with, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Sean, did you get any different feedback working for a non-White Knight book? Batman book?
No. I think because I'm me now, it sounds arrogant, I apologize. They're like, well, we want a 2-issue gap series. It could be a little tiny story arc. It could go anywhere. Do you know anybody? And I said, well, you guys are looking to hire women and LGBT and more diversity and all that. So I introduced them to Blake, and I guess we came up with the idea together or something.
Who chose Catwoman?
It was a Catwoman editor. Like we have
yeah.
a blank spot in our schedule for a Catwoman 2-issue series. So why don't you just do something? So I don't think we were really on their radar. I don't think they really paid much attention. The editor didn't even CC me on half the stuff. But in that, there's freedom. So this is how we got to go so far into a drug story before they finally caught it, So it was very hands-off, just like it is with White Knight, honestly. Like, I don't know if the DC's afraid to push back with me or what. Like, I actually don't mind getting some feedback and criticism. Like, I don't want freedom. Like, I wouldn't mind knowing what the rules are and, just the way I was raised. When you do something creative, Blake, do you want help and pushback, or do you want to be left the hell alone?
I understand it's different if you're writing somebody else's character.
Yeah.
So when I'm writing my own characters, I don't want feedback and pushback unless it's going to help the story, obviously. But I think when you're writing somebody else's character, I'm always mindful that there's stuff there that they might want to have or not have. And because it was a fill-in story, there's those 2 issues. I knew that they had another writer coming in to take off where we left off.
Right.
So we were being careful not to infringe on any of their storylines that they were going to be jumping into.
How about you? Do you like to be left alone when you're working, or do you like feedback?
I kind of like both. I like the feedback when it's the correct time for it. Getting feedback when it's like the deadline is in an hour, it makes me insane. And believe it or not, that happens more than you would think.
Yeah.
When I'm sure that like you said, the drug stuff kind of came out at the 11th hour, and that's the kind of stuff
That's so crazy to me, because it's like it's the whole character, and nobody picked that up until
No.
Yeah, that's
we should
wild.
write a book about all the weird notes you get from editorial sometimes. It's never-endingly fascinating. It's like reading Yelp reviews from weirdos. Like, what's the weirdest note you got on Jen Joker? I'll let Clay go first.
I remember kind of understandable ones, but little phrase notes like, and they were always questions. So we had one line where we name dropped Disneyland.
Oh, yeah.
And we didn't get a note that said, please change this. We got a note that said, we're not sure if we can do this. And I was like, all right, well, that's not my problem.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the weirdest note you got?
Yeah, again, they're kind of little ones, so it's there's nothing like the drug issue you had. But there was a note that, I'm trying to think how to say this without spoilers.
Why did you kill Batman?
Harley and Riot are in a bind, and their life is at risk. And one of the notes said in a bubble beside them, but what should their facial expressions be here? And we were like, what do you think? They're probably like scared.
They're being crushed by a robot hand. That's not so bad. I don't think that's a big...
No. At this point, I think... No, next week we'll find out about the robot.
Whatever.
But you can say crushed by a robot hand and not give anything away.
That's
I think.
true.
okay.
That's true. Okay.
That's not that specific when it comes to Batman.
But yeah, it's like, are they supposed to look introspective while they're getting crushed by a robot? Nah, probably not, right?
The weirdest note I got was on about a year ago. I was wrapping up with Beyond the White Knight. I always do a shot of all the Batmobiles. And in my first White Knight book, I used the Batman 89, the Keaton Batmobile, I always work it in. To the point where it's been in ads, people talk about it. I've signed models of. So
you even wrote a joke.
Yeah.
Did it make it to the final where he uses the Batmobile and the Joker's like, this one again?
So yeah, exactly. I'm making fun of myself.
Yeah.
And I even have Joker say, "Why do you always find a way to work this one in, don't you?" And you were the one that pushed me. When Batman gets into it, he's like, "Let's get nuts." That was your idea, and that was way before they brought it back for the new Flash movie.
Yes, thank you for laughing.
So my note from my editor was, "Ooh, I don't know if you can use the '89 Batmobile in this panel here."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "What? I've been doing it since 2017." She's like, "Really? Like, how are you did you not read the book?" Like, I know you're not a car person, fine. But she's like, "Oh, well, that movie was before my time." I'm like, "Well, I know what the Adam West Batmobile looks like. You just think someone editing Batman."
Oh man, way to make you feel old. Too.
Yeah. Wait, yeah. No, we're here to shame her, not me. Yeah, there's some weird... I remember they didn't want Harley to be pregnant in the second volume.
That's a weird note.
Yes, they wanted her to...
She already had the kids.
Has the baby.
Yeah, because in Curse of the White Knight, there's a big sequence where Harley actually gives birth, and they were kind of not great about that.
We don't want to see Harley pregnant. No one's going to want to see that. Let's have it so that she's already had these kids between the volumes.
Right.
And I thought, and my this is a different editor at the time. She hasn't had kids. But I'm shocked to get that note. It's very not woke, obviously. I think that there's a lot of story to dive into. It's kind of body shamey. Like, no one wants to see a pregnant. Like, what? This is DC Comics. Like, this is a very liberal company.
She has had a kid now, by the way.
She what?
She had a kid.
Oh yeah, that editor now has a child of her own.
Now she
We
understands.
never saw her pregnant.
I wonder if that note would be different now.
She wrote you a letter apologizing now that she has
that'd
a
be
kid, right?
Yeah.
And also, it was just a great sequence because Harley was giving birth while Jim Gordon was getting murdered. It was awesome. It was great.
Yeah, life, death.
Yeah. Do you want to throw out some questions?
Oh yeah.
Who's got a question? Anybody?
Matt Murdock, right there. Or which character? Sorry.
How did you find your voice for writing Bruce?
Yeah, so I was gonna repeat the question just so everyone could.
Sorry,
hear,
I still didn't hear it. The voice for who?
How did you find your voice for writing Bruce?
Bruce. Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, in Batman the Animated Series, which was my favorite, that's kind of like my Bible, my backbone. This is like an extension of that universe in a way. There's an episode in season 4 where Scarecrow takes away Batman's fear, and he's super cocky and angry and reckless. Maybe not cocky, but he's like dialed up to 11. And even Robin is so unnerved by this that he eventually ties Batman up and moves on in the adventure without him because Bruce is too reckless. So I basically took that version of Bruce and made it, he's in his 50s, maybe early 60s, doing it a long time. No, sorry, that would be like early 50s for Volume 1. He's very short and curt. Like, he likes to do things alone, yet he kind of surrounds himself with family. Like, there's this sort of hypocrisy here. And I just thought it would be really interesting to see him unhinged. And if he was really that reckless, it seemed to me that the Joker had plenty of opportunity to defeat Batman, but by following the laws. Like, imagine if you lived in Gotham and you're going to work and the bridge is destroyed again because Batman or something. You'd be like, shit, I gotta go. Oh my God, it's 3 hours. Like, how cool would it be a citizen of Gotham every time another building explodes or the bridge is ripped out, there's a flood or whatever? Like, eventually you'd be pretty tired of it. Like, I want to support Batman, but this is ridiculous because I'm gonna be late for work. Imagine it'd be really easy to flip the city, especially when you think about how much it costs to like rebuild this stuff, like taxpayers and all that. But that's not necessarily. I know that's no one wants to point that stuff out in comics because it kind of ruins the fun. But I was convinced that there was a way to talk about that stuff and not shame Batman, but have him accept it and overcome it in some way. You know, like have Joker play around with it. You know, let us marinate in these thoughts, and then basically return Gotham to the way it was. Which is, anytime you do a big story like this, you really can't change much at the end. It kind of has to come full circle. You know, so that was the idea.
Katana and Blake, did you guys have any one thing that helped you key into writing Harley or Selina?
One thing? I don't know. She was just...
Aside from the cocaine?
Yeah, the cocaine was fun. I had fun creating a new character, too. We got, they gave us a little creative license. So Tamber Quartz is my take on kind of like
excellent.
A social media influencer gone mad. And that was really fun. As kind of like the counterpart to Selina, right? So you can see they have this like back and forth kind of relationship, which I thought was interesting to write. But yeah, not one thing, but that was just fun.
Yeah.
I guess for me, it's also the animated series because Sean is the one who introduced that show to me. Shocker, I know. When we were very young and in college and eating cereal before class.
This is how you get girls. Show them your favorite cartoon.
And
dedicate your wiener to them forever.
The episode was Mad Love, I think.
Yeah.
That you first showed me. It was the first episode I ever saw, and even though that's not necessarily your version of Harley and White Knight, that still is sort of the guideway, right? Like that's like the highway to follow, and even when she's our Harley, your Harley, finding that like Mr. J kind of voice, always having that in the back of your mind when you're writing her dialogue, that was probably the one thing I keyed into as I wrote her.
Yeah. To answer my own question.
Please.
Please do, Clay.
When, I had been working with Sean, helping develop the first two volumes, which ran through the gamut of all the Batman characters that I was pretty well versed with. And then when I got the chance to write one, it was for Jason Todd, who was one of the characters I didn't have that much knowledge of compared to the other ones. And so we were kind of talking about things, and I was having a tough time clicking into what the story was going to be. And then something just clicked, and I went, oh, he's Johnny Lawrence from Cobra Kai. And Sean's like, yes. I'm like, okay, I got it. No problem. No problem at all.
Yeah.
That's great.
We even worked the mullet in from Nightwing.
Yes.
Which I thought was great.
Yes.
It's funny, mullets are kind of coming back, aren't they?
Sure.
Maybe.
There's a way to draw. I've seen a couple artists draw really good mullets.
So the thing is, I wrote into the script Nightwing with the mullet, and I very specifically gave visual reference of the WWF wrestler Shawn Michaels from like 1992 when he has the buzzed hair and like a mullet down to like the middle of his back. And the first drawing we got back, it was just like a little flip in the back, and I was like, no.
Yeah.
No, like this. And the next round, it was a little bit longer, and I was like, no.
And we don't give a lot of notes. We generally respect the artist, but like we needed this.
This
mullet
was
to happen.
the one I almost walked off the project because this mullet was not big enough. But we compromised, and it's fine.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
In the back.
Ooh.
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
question
about
is,
Zorro?
are you allowed to talk about your upcoming Zorro?
Yes, I am. Next question.
No, please.
Well, before we get on to that, I teased that I would tell where the universe is going. I'm doing Zorro right now, and I have a few other books under my belt. Clay and I are going to do a book next year together. When I come back to DC, I want to do World's Finest, so Batman, Superman team up. But in my universe, Bruce is like 65, and Clark is 20. And, Bruce reacts like he would. He's scared of what this represents, and he spends the first half of the book studying Clark and working with the FBI. And the FBI agents are all Justice League members, but none of them have powers. They're just like Wally West is who you use?
Yep, Wally West is
Yeah, Wally's
Flash.
like really fast at typing, and, they all are in
He
character.
talks a lot. He's really annoying.
They're led by Diana Prince, who's sort of ex-military badass, whatever. Anyway, so Bruce figures out how to defeat Clark, and he tricks him into the Forest of Solitude and sucks his powers away. But when he does this, he realizes he accidentally set off a beacon, and a Stargate opens up in the Fortress of Solitude. And Bruce realizes that there's some kind of army headed towards Earth, and they are all like Clark. They're all superpowered. And Bruce just neutralized the only ally that might have been able to help him stop this. So the second half of the book, he and Clark are forced to work together. And they basically have to go through the Stargate, like 2001 style, and have an adventure to figure out how to get his powers back. So I want it to be more of like a hard sci-fi, not like a Blade Runner sci-fi, but more like 2001. And anyway, when they do this, the computer system, which is Kryptonian, blasts the FBI team, and it gives them all powers like that. So, like the 6 gods of Krypton. So suddenly Wonder Woman has the powers of Wonder Woman, Wally Wood, and blah, 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 blah. So it's kind of a way to create the Justice League and the White Knight universe very quickly. And get a JLA White Knight going eventually. But, after this next book, I don't know how tired I'll be. Maybe that'll be the end of it. Or maybe DC will want to run with it without me and just keep expanding. We're not really sure. We're just going to kind of see how it goes. But that's the plan for now.
And I think what's unique about that, too, is that generally you don't see Batman, you don't see the DC universe build from Batman out. It's usually Batman, and then someone at the end is like, oh, they're also Wonder Woman is here somewhere else.
Yeah.
But Sean's found a way to open the universe up and have it all stem from what he's been doing, which I think is pretty cool.
It's mostly from ignorance and laziness on my part. I
Honestly, my favorite parts of the book have been born from ignorance. Like the biggest one, which we've talked about many times, is in the first volume, when we got into Jason Todd, I was reading the scripts, and there was a line or something about Dick Grayson being the second Robin, and Jason being the first one. And I wrote back to him, I was like, oh, that's an interesting take. And he was like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you were looking, so Dick is in a graveyard, and he sees Jason Todd's gravestone. And he's like, oh, yeah, he was Robin before me. And like an idiot. I know there's an order to the Robins, but I also just thought of them as a collective. And I totally had a brain fart and didn't realize that by putting this tombstone in there and having that line, I thought it was just like an Easter egg. Oh, yeah, Jason Todd died. Let's do a little nod to that. And I didn't focus on the fact that this changes the order of the Robins. So when you pointed it out, you're like, well, this is an easy fix. Change the line. And I was like, let's just let it fly. See what happens.
Yeah, honestly.
It's never going to come back.
Well, the weird thing is, it kind of grew into this weird linchpin for the whole series because so much of it revolves around the night that Joker beat Jason close to death.
Yeah.
And how that affected the Joker, how that affected Harley, how that affected Bruce, how that ultimately affected Jason and Dick, and it just kind of turned into this weird hub that the whole thing kind of grew out of. So,
Jason's
Happy
the angry
accidents.
one because Bruce took him in. He wasn't much older than Jason. He was maybe 10 years older in my continuity. And he screwed up. He wasn't good at being Batman or being a father, an older brother figure. And Jason supposedly got killed. So Bruce decides to get another Robin after the first one died.
Went back to the pound.
Makes it a lot darker of a story. And then we have a scene where Jason, who's survived, goes back home, and Bruce has replaced him with Dick. It just made for some really unusual, really punchy scenes that I'm glad that we did it, but it was just born out of ignorance, honestly. I didn't think the first volume would really sell. I never thought I'd get a chance to do more. So I've been sort of making up for that mistake since 2017.
Hey, if it works, it's not a mistake, right? Anybody else? The question?
I was going to say, you never actually talked about Zorro. You never
that's
answered
right.
the question.
Sorry.
So,
Yeah, at the end, we'll plug our next projects. But I got the rights to do Zorro. We're launching a Kickstarter in October. It's a Day of the Dead themed Zorro where it takes place modern times. Like this is village that's filled with drug dealers, like that show Narcos. And there's this kid in there who has a psychotic break, and he's convinced that he's Zorro. And he's sort of like Don Quixote in that way. And he starts going after drug dealers and killing them dressed as Zorro with a sword. What starts out as a joke turns into a giant problem for the cartel because this kid is really good at it. And eventually the villagers all get behind him, and it's this like spiritual upheaval as people just like they build like a small army to fight these narcos, and village helps save this village in Mexico called La Vega. And Diego de la Vega is Zorro's real name. So I thought, well, what if this was the historical home of Zorro? Like, is Zorro real? Was he from here? Is he not? So that's the idea. It's just going to be 4 issues. The Kickstarter will have like big 11x17 fancy expensive editions, cheaper ones, posters and all that. If you come by the table after we do a signing, I've got flyers, little mini posters for free you can just take. Yeah, and then it'll come out through your local comic book shops shortly after. But if you like to get in on the ground floor and have options about variant covers, like we have Adam Hughes doing a Lady Rawhide variant cover. A lot of other big names. It might be something you're into. Or you can just wait and go to Double Midnight or whatever and grab it there.
What made you choose Zorro?
I've always loved swashbuckle type stuff. I want to do Robin Hood one day too. Obviously in White Knight Volume 2, we had a lot of sword fighting and stuff. I don't know, it's just for some reason it speaks to me.
I just have to add, every Halloween, Sean has one costume. He wears it year after year.
2, Zorro and the Dreadfire Roberts.
Okay, they're the same costume.
Yeah, one has a hat and the other one doesn't, I think.
Correct.
Right?
It depends on if I remember to bring the hat.
So that should tell you why he's doing Zorro. He's loved this property for as long as I've known him.
I take photographs of myself jumping around in my basement like a maniac, and I debate like, should I post these? Is this super nerdy? And I keep almost hitting post, and I'm like, I don't know if I need to do this.
And
Yeah,
the story's about a young insane man who thinks he's Zorro.
It's so true. Like,
Oh man.
Anyway,
Yeah.
sorry. Had to add that little fact.
We had a question out
Couple
there.
other questions.
As a big fan of Batman the Animated Series, DC seems to love doing direct adaptations of comics, Batman comics. Is there any chance that you would want yours adapted like that? Have they ever talked to you about anything like that? Or is it...
Yeah, I would love it. They haven't talked to me, but I think at some point they will, because they eventually get around to anything. My worry with it would be they're going to just run it through the mill. Like DC would, I don't know who they're using to animate, but they just use this animation studio that's very samey and kind of, I wish it all looked like the animated series, but the quality level's sort of off and on sometimes. So I would love it if they did it, but I don't know if they would treat it that way. I think they would just make it one of the 3 that they're going to do that year and move on, It would be nice if they told me about it and came to me and asked if I wanted to get involved. But they don't always necessarily do that, and that's just sort of how it goes. Like I'm not the type of creator that gets bent out of shape about that. I know the contract I signed. I'd love to be involved. If I was them, I would call me, but it's Batman's theirs, it's their baby. They paid me for it. It is what it is. But I think if studios are smart, they would bring in the creators, because I think the audiences are very sharp and want to know that the company did the best they could to bring in the people that worked on it for authenticity. Like if there's a big movie coming out and you love the comic, it would really annoy you if the original creators could have been included and weren't, So I feel like that gives companies street cred, and then they're very wise to that, or at least they should be.
Not to gripe about animated Batman, but as the host of an animated Batman podcast, I feel like I should. When they to kind of speak to what you're saying a bit, when they did the Long Halloween, I got really excited because Tim Sale's artwork is so unique and would be really cool to see animated.
Yeah.
And then they just did the same thing they always do, and I was like, oh.
Even when they do Hellboy, And Mike's kind of a buddy of mine. They never made a cartoon that looks like his drawing,
Right.
which would look weird. Like his art is unusual, but I love that it's very animatable. What's the problem? Why do they have to make it look like anime? You know?
Yeah.
It's insane to me, but that's just how they think, you know. And it's their money they're spending, so
Yeah.
what are you gonna do? I mean, getting the animated series style was an uphill battle back in the early
Right.
'90s. The Bruce with the right angle chin and these stylized jackets and Gordon's like do-whip haircut. No one had ever seen anything like that. Like it looked wrong, and they had to fight to convince the studio, let's go with this boxy, streamlined style. I think it adds to it. And like now we just take it for granted. Now, characters in anime have squared off fingers, sharp angles all the time. It's not a big deal. But in 1990, everyone was used to seeing Disney and He-Man and Hanna-Barbera, where everything was generally smooth.
Could you imagine being an executive at Fox or wherever in the early 90s just trying to get a cartoon made?
Yeah.
And then they come in and like, all right, we're going to draw everything on black paper. And they go, well, what?
Yeah. Yeah, they would airbrush the black paper backgrounds for Batman, so it would have this inherent darkness to it. And when that studio started doing Superman, you could see them struggle because they're used to using black starting from there. And now it's like, oh my God, everything is so well lit. How do we do this?
And then they ruined everything anyway.
Yeah.
Another question, if anyone's got one?
The question is,
Damian, all right, bringing in Damian Scott or any of the Robins. No, I was open to doing more spin-offs if writers came and pitched me stuff like that. Like I don't know a whole lot about Damon, I'm sorry to say. I tried to get every character included in the last book, and the one criticism I got was there's just too many characters in this book. And people were like nice and said, oh, we like how you balance them, but it's just a lot. And I'm like, I don't like writing a ton of characters. I just included them because I thought I'd have to, and people would be annoyed, like, how come you didn't include blah, 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 There's always that guy out there.
Well, there was, as I'm reading the scripts for the Beyond the White Knight, I think it's like the last issue or something. I'm reading through, and I think it was just the actual drawing. You did this montage page, and I was like, oh, who's that tiny Robin you drew in there?
Yeah.
Because Dick is there, Barbara's there, and there's a tiny Robin who's there. It's like, oh, that's Tim. And I was like, what?
Tim was in there.
You've done 24 issues of this. His name has never come up, and then you're just going to drop. People are going to go nuts.
Yeah. What are you going to do? I'm not equipped to have the position I have in comics. So I'm very clear about that. I just wanted to draw cool things, and somehow I lied
totally
my way
fair.
into Batman.
I think we had someone over.
Sure, we have 8 minutes left. We'll try to go quickly. We'll do white shirt first?
Sure.
So I was just thinking about, we were talking about swashbucklings or Robin Hood, and then I was thinking of plot holes as well, which I was really happy to do that Kickstarter, so I'll jump
Yeah.
on Zorro. But do you guys find that you're really influenced by classic literature in any and all of your plots as you kind of develop these stories?
Yeah, you guys probably are more. You're more of a reader than I am. Like I'm not a trained writer like the two in the middle are. Like I'm going off of what I know, what I can draw, and I feel like I'm writing wrestling matches. Just set it up, have a cool payoff. It's not meant to be Shakespeare, but the amount that you read, and with you as well, you guys are more trained in writing, I think. So, do you let classic literature influence you?
I definitely do. So actually the Red Sonja project coming out, which is steampunk, which historically steampunk loves to throw in classic lit references or references from that time period. You know what I mean, like Victorian and stuff. So like Jack the Ripper is usually making like cameos in steampunk.
He's always showing up.
Yeah, that Ripper, man. But so in my steampunk Red Sonja coming out, I chose the picture of Dorian Gray as my influence, which is one of my favorite stories from high school days. But
That's so
what about
cool.
you?
I love hearing that. Like, I relate to that as well. Yeah, because when I was in university, I have an English lit degree. So, when you're studying all the Shakespearean elements and things like that, I feel like my story structure is very influenced by, all the classics that I read. So I'm very detail-oriented, and I will work off, like not all writers do this, but I work off of an outline. I'm very strict about that because I like to be able to see where the story arc is and put in those elements. And it's actually interesting because last year I got to teach a course at the Joe Kuber School.
Oh, wow.
In
cool.
writing, and it was so difficult. I mean, if anyone's a teacher, you guys are like amazing because you do things, and I didn't realize how much effort it is to like sit there and realize, why am I doing this, and how do you teach this to someone else, right? So that was very eye-opening for me as a writer. I feel like I learned a lot from the students about writing and about why I do certain things from that class.
Nice.
So that's a great opportunity too. If anyone can take a course or something or learn from, I used, getting to talk to them, and it's such a great learning opportunity if you can get in. Yeah.
What about you, Clay?
I'm not classic literature so much. I'm always been more of a movie guy, and so my writing process is a mixture of movie plots and comic books, and I'm a hack, is what I'm saying. But it's what's that? Excellent. What I do is I pay attention to structure as much as I can, and I like to analyze plots and why things work and why things don't, and how the certain emotional beats weave their way through these stories in a way that makes sense, so that I find it allows me to break things down easier, and then I can kind of synthesize that into like, okay, I know what this needs. We can go here, we can go here, we can go here, and kind of like build the roller coaster in my head as I'm going.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that when I came to comics, I studied, just read books on screenplays, like Sid Field's Story,
Mm-hmm.
and Good
Save
Script,
the
Bad
Cat,
Script, Save
good-
the Cat.
yeah.
3-act structure, so you break down movies like here's why Star Wars works. 22 minutes in, there's a turn. Luke has the call to action, whatever. Like there's math to it, and I think it's really interesting to see the formula. And some would argue that there's only 10 different types of scripts in movies. Like The Matrix is basically Monsters Inc. You can wax poetic all you want, but I really enjoyed that process because it was like a format of how to tell a story generally quickly. And I feel like comics have a lot in common with movies, where you need to hold people's attention. You need to have some cliffhanger at the end of each book. The dialogue has to be trimmed down, whereas in movies, time is money. In comics, page space is money. So, the more they talk, the less you're going to see of Batman's shoulder if the word balloon's right there. So it really forces you to like cut, and cut again. And I love getting as much impact as I can out of as few words as possible. But when you're writing prose, you can sort of have like, oh, we'll talk about this for a few chapters, and the plot can be more relaxed and grow naturally. Whereas when you're comics, I'm very like aimed at a target, and everything I write moves the script forward. There really isn't any meandering, which maybe is a criticism of my stuff, is it feels like it's moving too fast and it never lets up. But
We got
one more question?
Time for one more.
This gentleman in the back.
That suit.
They've all evolved a lot over the years. Are there favorite elements, things that you just look at and go,
Clay wants the nipples.
No, I want this bat symbol specifically. The one from the '89 Batman is.
Tell them why that's special. Point out the different number of the feet. Like, isn't that
I don't
not
know what you're
actually
talking
used?
about. What's that? Oh, yes.
Yeah.
So this little extra flare under the middle thing here.
It's 2 extra points on that.
Yeah, they only use it in the first movie and then it disappears, and it's the only place it's ever been used. And for some reason, graphically, I just find it more appealing, and also because I'm a nerd, but I like to be different.
But for all the advertising of the '89 and all the toys,
Yeah, it's not in any of the promotional stuff. All the official
Yeah.
logos are the normal classic one, but the one in the movie just is different for some reason.
right. A deep cut.
Yeah.
Do you ever anyone ever go like, "Nice man, I know what that shirt really means"?
I just got it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping. Fingers crossed.
Clay's big into shirts that are nerding on the down low, where if you look quickly, you can't tell what it is, but then you'll find it's a sci-fi reference from the '60s and only 3 people know about it. And if you give him the nod, he'll be like, "Yeah, you know that movie I'm talking about."
It's the only way I can wear a Videodrome T-shirt to like a family dinner.
Sean, what tool from the Batsuit would you want?
Oh, a tool.
Or like gadget or whatever.
Can just take the Batmobile as a whole, I guess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Blake, what about you?
What about you?
don't know, like they're all so different and unique. I love that you got to do the cover when we were even doing like Catwoman, when you did the cover with her from the comic.
Yeah.
And then they kind of pushed back, but you did like the animated suit on her, remember? And we weren't sure they were going to let us do that. So I thought that was cool to like cross over.
This is a fun story to end on. They made me change the boob on her.
Oh yeah, the pointy
Yeah.
nipple, right?
So
yeah.
I'm not like a pinup TNA type artist. I like that art. Adam Hughes and friends like it sells. Men like it, women like it. It is what it is. And there's a way to do it that's not creepy. And when I draw TNA stuff, I try to still make her empowered and all that because I don't want to get canceled again. So I drew an anatomically correct boob, which has the boob part, and then
The what part?
Such a
What
weird
part does it
way
have?
to end this.
They're the bump, like the nipple bump.
Uh-huh.
And it fits Blake's brand too. You both write a lot of sexy stuff, so I felt I was pretty in the clear to do this because I'm not this cover guy. I never draw this type of stuff. So
Good
certainly
save.
once.
Good save.
And the editor, she happened to not think that was appropriate and made me redraw it. And I'm like, do you have a problem with the female anatomy? I mean, I thought I was covered. I'm on a female empowered book. I've got Blake as my writer. I thought they would let it go, but she was like, nope, has to be smooth.
Well, we got a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
Like I tried to include some lyrics from a song in the scene when they're driving the Lamborghini
Oh, I don't
down.
think, yeah.
And I got pushed back on that, and they were like, "You're not allowed to include lyrics." But I looked it up, and you are allowed if it's like under a certain number of verses.
Got
it's
it.
like 2 lines.
Are you
or something.
really?
But
Yeah.
they still made us take it out. They
Yeah.
said no. So there was
Yeah.
a lot of pushback.
What
on
song
it.
did you use? Is it like some 80s song, I'm
It
guessing?
was some, it was
Yeah.
something to go along with like Miami Vice theme.
Yeah, that
right?
Was it
cocaine. Is
Was it
Lamborghini.
Cocaine by Eric
No.
Clapton?
That would have been good, but.
All right, I think we have to wrap it up. But thank you guys for coming out. Thank you for listening to us blab about Batman. And we'll all be in the Armory signing books and stuff, so hope to see you guys over
We've
there.
got prints. We've got books for sale. I've got some Clay's covers out from Batman White Knight. You've got some stuff. We have pins, flasks, mugs. all
Oh
kinds
yeah,
of-
we do have like a very limited.
My wife's big on doing
Yeah, it's like a
small
Pier 1
merch.
over there.
So normally
It's
my
too
table
long
is
to
very
explain
boring.
right now. Just come check out the table. There's some fun shit there.
Thank you guys.
Thanks everyone.
Thanks a lot. Thank you.